All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Our next session is going to be about Denver marijuana data, so it should be a good topic. And we've got Denise, Hawkins, Stacey, Schipper, and Yvonne Moss, all from the City and County of Denver.
Thank you. Good morning. I think it's still morning, right? Today we're going to talk briefly about data within the City and County of Denver about marijuana. I sound really loud. Am I loud? Just wanted to briefly talk to you guys about how the city addressed data needs to understand the impact of city operations once marijuana became legal. There were other efforts around safety and health, but they also wanted to understand operations as well. There was no roadmap for Denver. Denver really worked hard in developing thoughtful regulations and processes, but then there was definitely a time that we needed to pull the data and do analysis and really understand the impacts. This was a collaborative effort. It wasn't technology services driving this. This was really the mayor driving it. He brought a governance board together for marijuana, and all of the agencies got basically on board to help understand that. They wanted to be a bit more proactive instead of reactive. We ended up using technology that we had in-house. So we have an BI tool, OBIE. It's an Oracle tool. We also had a data warehouse, very small data warehouse. But we started building and modeling the data, building integrations, and then building a presentation layer on top of that we call the marijuana dashboard. It is very robust. You can drill down and get into details about it, but it provides a lot of very key information in graph form. With that being said, I wanted to introduce my colleague, Yvonne Moss. She's actually the senior data architect. She modeled the data, and she also built the integrations. Let me get that guy. Sure.
Okay. Marijuana data. So January 1st, 2014, recreational marijuana became legal in the state of Colorado and thereby the city and county of Denver. And as Denise mentioned, there were a lot of business processes and practices that had to be put in place by the multiple agencies that were affected by the change of the law. And in doing so, we had agencies that were directly affected and some that were more indirectly affected. So we had the fire department, we had the police department, excise and license, the courts, the crime lab, environmental health, finance, and several others. And we were tasked with building this dashboard so that they could determine the operational impacts to their agencies to see, do they need additional employees, where do they need to shift their employees, that sort of thing. Okay, so the changes for the business processes provided us with a wealth of data, not necessarily the best data, but it was data. And then the goal was for us to provide them with that actionable intelligence to make those decisions within their agencies. So back to the data integrity, once the business processes were put into place, each agency generally has its own application into which they place their data. So they had some that were homegrown, some that were COTS solutions, and we had databases, SQL Server, Oracle. We got CSV files from some agencies. We had Excel spreadsheets. We have web services from which we consume data. And the thing about marijuana data is it's relatively new. Everybody wants to see what the tax revenue is right now, how many fees we're collecting, how that money is being distributed. They want to know where the marijuana stores are. They want to know how close they are to their schools. So it's very visible data, and it was critical that the data that we presented, both internally and ultimately externally, was consistent and was actually enforced and enhanced and accepted by the agencies that were responsible for collecting the data. Let's see. So initially, there were no constraints in place. We would have inspection data from the fire department and from excise and license, where they collected completely different attributes for inspections. And obviously, their role for inspecting was different, but it would have been what they wanted us to do is present this in a trending model across agencies, essentially performing an inspection function. And we didn't have these keys to use, so we came up with a methodology for being able to present that data across agencies. Sometimes even within the same agency, the data, and I'm sure you all are familiar with the end users entering data in non-constrained values where they just ad hoc put stuff in, so it's very difficult to report on some of this data. So we had to find the data stakeholders and the subject matter experts in each of the agencies and become their friends. We had to have a knowledge transfer, a lot of back and forth, and a lot of times the initial ETL would provide an output that was unexpected, or what they would determine later wasn't exactly what they had anticipated. Many times the developer who had written the functionality within the application discovered that the end users weren't using it the way that he had anticipated. So there was a lot of rework. We literally, after we were on phase 3 of the marijuana project, after phase 1, we removed all of the fire department data because they were not comfortable or confident in that data. So phase 3, we are literally essentially greenfielding the fire department data, and we are starting over from scratch. So we're eliminating all the ETL that we initially started with and reworking it based upon these additional insights from the inspectors that are out in the field. Okay, what else? So we also have to deal with sensitive data from police and fire. So we have to ensure that we protect the victims and all the other CGIS data so that we don't release data that cannot be released internally or externally. And what I'm going to do now is just show you some screenshots from our marijuana dashboard. This is the first one. This is revenue by revenue source, and this is recorded and this is reported quarterly. So that's another thing, is we get a lot of the data in a non-consistent time frame. So some of it is daily, some of it's quarterly, some of it's monthly, some of it's ad hoc. So revenue data comes in usually 2 months after the end of the quarter. So right now we only have through the June as far as taxes are concerned, but the fees we get daily. So those are more up to date. Then excise and license specifically wanted to know what the overall workload summary was for their agency when it dealt with marijuana. So they had us chart the 6 types of marijuana work that they do. The main one being usually inspections and the renewals performed. Okay, so there we have. And they also was this misconception that a lot of the work that they were doing was because of the legalization of recreational marijuana. But what it came right down to, on the right, you can see that little green line on the bottom was the amount of work that they do that deals with marijuana, and then the big purple is everything else that they do. So it was eye-opening in that sense. Then we have the applications by facility type. We actually had medical marijuana became legal quite a number of years ago. So in 2013, everyone started applying for the recreational, or the anticipation of it becoming legal, and so they report on that. What else do we have? Pending applications. They like to know which phase they're in so that they can determine if they need more inspectors out. Let's see. Then we have completed inspections, and they did end up hiring a number of new inspectors in several agencies. And in the lower left, that is the anticipated number of inspections for excise and license. And on the number on the right is the actual number of inspections. So they're using this data to go back and talk to the inspectors and say, hey, why isn't this number higher? Why aren't we completing as many inspections as we expected? And they also report on the number of re-inspections. So many times the owner of the marijuana grow facility won't be present when they show up. So they're trying to iron out these details as well so they can be more efficient in their processes. Okay, so let's see. Blue licenses, renewals by facility type, marijuana locations. They want to know how many total locations we have for marijuana. And then they want to know distinct, is it retail and medical? Is it just retail or is it just medical? Then we have marijuana crime. This is a very subjective process. There is a person in the police department who goes through every offense each day and determines if it was a marijuana-related offense. And so once that person leaves, the next person that comes in is going to sit down and determine this. So that they're trying to standardize this so that it isn't so subjective. And one of the outcomes of this, if you'll notice down in the chart, it has non-industry and industry. One of the interesting things was that most of the crimes that occur are against the industry because they have literally hundreds of thousands of dollars in cash in a lot of these facilities, and people take advantage of that. They are targets for crime. So it's not people who are out stoned on marijuana committing crimes, it's people going in and breaking into the facilities. Okay, let's see. Okay, and this is just one interesting one. This is statutes, this is court cases. You can see in April it spikes because it's 420, so everybody goes out and gets stoned in the park, and then the number, so there's just a ton of tickets on that day. So April is always the high one. They expected that, but it's really great to see it in a chart where you can see what's really going on there. So on that note, the marijuana data has matured over the last year. It's evolved actually. It's become much more mature. The confidence level in the data has increased greatly, and what we want to do now is present it to the public. So I'm going to introduce Stacey Schipper, and she is going to discuss our open data efforts.
All right, so I'm just going to quickly go through this so that we can go to lunch. I'm getting a 1-minute warning here. So I just want to let you know that we are getting ready to public face that data, hopefully coming up here in the next month or so. There's a lot of the Ben Wellingtons of the world that would really like to analyze this data. Now that we're comfortable with it internally, we feel like we're on a solid enough platform that we can let people test their hypotheses on this data. So we're going to continue to improve on our existing open data platform efforts. We currently have an all-volunteer-run open data platform, so we're bringing that more in-house, structuring it with our denvergov.org branding, and creating more of a user experience, overall user experience versus just kind of like a data dump on the data. At the same time, we're also mitigating security concerns. Like Yvonne said, this is an all-cash business. Putting out the locations of every marijuana store is something that we do right now, but it's also something we need to really seriously consider because those places can be targets. We also don't want to release information that's criminal justice related because that information is protected under an act called CJIS. And we are also looking to include any new data points that we run into. So I have a couple of links here that you might want to go to later if you have marijuana-related questions or want to look at our open data that we have available. The top link is for our open data, current open data website, and the bottom link here is information on how in Denver what a retail marijuana looks like. So, thank you.